Well, it's not every day that I have a professional athlete, especially a professional snowboarder on the show. But today things have changed. I've got my good friend, Mr. Jeff Lavin from. Actually, I met Jeff. Was it last week, Jeff, at a meeting mastermind we were at?
Yeah, man.
And
Last
yeah,
week, Friday.
yeah. Jeff was the keynote speaker. And what really piqued my interest, not only is he a flamboyant guy, as you could see from his attire, but what he's doing, buying these cash flowing businesses. And I was like, man, it's just a different way to think about stuff. And I was like, I was talking to him, I was like, you know what, you could really help a lot of people in my community because they're looking for passive income. They're looking to acquire different sources of it, whether it's from businesses or real estate. So got you here. Glad you could join us. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm stoked, Jeff. Thanks for having me first and foremost.
So I have to we have to start off by asking you your nickname, Shredneck. I mean, I'm a redneck from Louisiana, and you're a shredneck. So tell us a little bit about where that came from.
Yeah, so we're all familiar with the term of rednecks, guys that like our trucks, like hunting, like fishing, and kind of your DIY guy. And, I like NASCAR and snowboarding, skateboarding, surfing. A lot of it kind of follows music and that culture. And I was totally different. So I was totally this redneck, but I shredded. And there was one time when I was out of Breckenridge, I showed up after getting this beautiful bull elk, good 400 pounds, got him at right before sunrise. And after we field dressed him and got him out there, loaded him in the truck, said, you know what? I'm just going to throw my boots on and go take a few laps through the train park and get my reps in that way. And nobody knew who I was, just because I was wearing all camo gear and stuff like that. Everybody thought I was, they're like, who's this kook? Who's this guy from Texas, or what's his deal? And then I just dropped a couple banger runs where, it's on a 540 this way, 900 that way. Everybody's like, oh, whoa, you rip. And then they saw the rack hanging out back of my truck when we all went down there. And I said, well, I can only keep a few hundred pounds in the fridge. So here you go. And then just kind of the name Shredneck stuck because I shred, I'm redneck, and I own it.
Nice. So tell us, what's it like to be a professional snowboarder?
Oh man, it was a fun time, and I mean, shoot, I turned pro in 2003. It's like 20 years ago almost, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Right.
It's so amazing. It's a rigorous training schedule at the same time, though, too. So you have to be absolutely dedicated just to it in pursuit of it. It's long days, 4 or 5 in the morning, and long nights. Like sometimes it's not wrapping up until 10, but um, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. At the peak of my career, I had about 10 sponsors from stuff like Monster, Oakley. It was an amazing run. I retired in 2010, 2011. That was kind of like my last season. As I kind of started a whole brand, and then I Brett Favred it. You guys are familiar with him down there.
Oh yeah.
We're familiar with him up in the north, and I got the itch again, so I did the retire, unretire, just to help promote my snowboard brand.
Well, I think it seems like people always make like a major shift in life when they have some sort of life-changing event. Whether you're
Mhm.
overweight, you smoke, you drink, and then you start having the chest pain and the heart attack. Well, that usually gets people to make a change. For me, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was actually snow skiing in Beaver Creek, and I fell and I had a wrist injury. And that was my
Ooh,
wake up call to, like, you know what, if I can't use my hands, I can't provide for my family.
right.
And that led me down the road to finding extra streams of income not so much because I wanted all this money. It was just like an insurance policy. Like if I get hurt, because you know how disability policies are, you'd be sitting there fighting with the insurance company trying to get your money versus I already have streams of income coming in. So you're you kind of have the, I've heard a little bit about your story. You have kind of like have a same type of story as I had. You had some knee injuries, some ACL injuries that actually got you to go from snowboarding to kind of what you're doing now with your entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit about that, how that came about.
Yeah. So we have a saying too, as professional athletes in action sports or extreme sports, we call ourselves disposable heroes. Um, and you all see the amazing things where it works out amazing, and you see the videos and stuff like that, but a lot of times it doesn't. So I blew up both my knees, and each knee, each ACL surgery takes about 6 months to rehab from that, with a full reconstruction. So unfortunately, I didn't do them both at the same time. That would have been really convenient because I would have just been out for 6 months.
Yeah.
So I did it. I did my first one, my right ACL. I did that in February of 2006. Rehabbed it, got all Rocky Balboa with it. I had a tiger. And then 4 days into the next season, I blew out my left ACL.
Mm.
I mean, I guess you could say I wanted the hardware upgrade and I wanted to match, and have matching reconstructed ACLs. But when you're not snowboarding, you're not making money. When
Right.
you're not out there, you're not competing or filming, you're not getting your sponsors' names out there, you're not making money. Luckily, I was kind of diversifying early and stuff like that into stuff like Apple. Bought a good amount of shares in 2003. And then I had a nice diversified portfolio early on, but I said, well, what can I do? I started studying kinesiology, went back for my personal trainer certs with the plans just to become a better athlete. But there's also this other void, because when your life is dedicated to a sport, you're dedicated. You just don't know what to do with anything else. That's your time. That's 80, 90 hours a week is eating, sleeping, breathing that sport. So I had to find something else to fill that void. And I said, you know what? I dreamed about this online business or creating something remote. I had a website, and I said, what can I do with my website where it could do something? Like I could build some traffic from it. And this was, mind you, this is 2006, 2007.
What
So
was
there
your
wasn't,
website? What was that?
so it was called lavinsnow.com. And it was
Okay.
just my promotional, like my athlete website. I
Okay.
said, what can I do with this to drive more traffic from this and monetize it with click ads, and advertising and stuff like that, and sponsors? Um, I like to travel around a lot, and I know a lot of great places and a lot of cool things. So we created a whole database of, we called it Action Sports 411, where we put in all the amazing spots to go for après ski, après snowboard, all the great spots to get cheap tickets, all the kind of like the local 411 of
Mhm.
all the amazing spots and all the fun spots you should definitely shred. If you're at Breckenridge, if you're at Beaver Creek, like you definitely want to check out these spots. And if it's a couple days after a storm, go to this spot, you can find powder. And then we started doing that with, because I had a lot of other colleagues in snow and surf and skate and Moto X, BMX. So we expanded it out to that. And all of a sudden, traffic's coming in because you're getting all the back rankings and stuff like that from Google.
Mhm.
Um, and we were using traffic. Our traffic source to drive new traffic was MySpace, driving people in from there and finding our people. And there was no there was no ads or anything like that. The only thing out there was kind of pay per click.
Yeah.
It's called CPC and the banner ads. We started putting those and monetizing the site as well with sponsorships, and then as well like with banner ads and stuff like that, and then creating a email list, which I was actually able to retain after I took my exit. So going into this exit, I was getting ready to get back on my board, and this thing kind of took a life of its own, where it just it hit critical mass, and I didn't expect it to take off the way it did. Um, so I was going to have to figure out, how do I replace myself with an operator or with a team, or how do I scale this? And I was 25, 26. Um, Around that time, just luck has it, there was a competitor out there, not really a competitor, but they had the action profiles. That was the name of it. So they had, oh shoot, excuse me, there was another one called Go to 11. Go to 11 made us an offer for it. So we said, yeah, let's do this. They pretty much have the Facebook or the MySpace of action sports specific stuff, and this aligns with them. And they made me an awesome offer of a little bit more than I would have made snowboarding that year.
Hmm.
And knowing what I know now, I probably should negotiate it for like a little bit of equity or something to sweeten the pot. But they offered me a nice check. And I said, all right, I don't have to worry about scaling this. I don't have to worry about this from then on. And it's in good hands. They're going to take it and they're going to utilize it. And the community is going to be taken care of. And people that still love it, they can still use it on their profiles and stuff. And then they can even connect to other people. It's a perfect exit. So I said, yeah, let's do this. I can go back to snowboarding. So I took the buyout, and that was my first exit in my mid 20s.
Hmm. Cool. So that's kind of started your journey on to becoming an entrepreneur, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you come from, I remember we were talking at the meeting, and you actually have a background, some of your family members, and you think that's where you kind of got your entrepreneurial start. Something about you had family member had like a patent or something, you told me.
Yeah, absolutely. My great uncle had the patent on the pull tabs for Venetian blinds, as well as the drawstring and sweatpants.
Oh, that's right.
And
That's right.
my grandfather was a small business owner as well too. He had the contracts for the Sears Tower building in Chicago. Um, but seeing generational wealth being built
Hmm.
was because of small business and medium-sized business, and a lot of that was on my mom's side. And just noticing how they built, everything from residuals with their patents, um, to building small businesses and taking other things that integrate well with them. My grandfather, he had the B2B side with a lot of commercial, but where he really started kicking butt is when he made an acquisition of a residential Venetian blind company and was able to do a lot more units and a lot more volume. And that was kind of, timing's everything with some of those endeavors. And he was right at the perfect time in the mid late 70s into the early 80s.
Okay. And I was actually having a conversation last night with my brother-in-law talking about entrepreneurship, and he said he watches my YouTube channel, which is, I'm glad to know there's at least one person out there watching it.
Nice.
He said he likes these interviews that I'm doing, and we're talking about entrepreneurship. And I said, you know what? And he was actually had been W-2. He's actually in school again now online, and he wants to start his own business, his own company, maybe cybersecurity. And it's almost just like something's in us, to be an entrepreneur. And I was telling him, for me, it's not really the money or whatever. It's almost like a game. It's like
Oh, totally.
getting kind of like the art of the deal. Having that challenge out there, like, hey, can I do it? Can I really start this business? Can I really scale it? So, what do you think about entrepreneurship? Do you think it's a game as well, or what do you think?
It's a game, and it fills my void that took up a lot of time of training, of riding, of eating, eating perfect, of all the things I had to do as an athlete.
Yeah.
It's all it's all a game, but it's also a game that can impact people, like anybody that's involved in our organizations. It's a game for me, but it's also, the game is to help them rise up and hit and achieve their goals.
And so when, you had the injuries and then, like you were saying, these professional athletes, they eat, drink, sleep, it's all they think about is their career. And then one day it's over. I mean, it's just over like that. So how did you deal with retiring? I'm sure you retired at a pretty early age. How did you deal with going from a professional athlete to where you are now?
So actually it was like 29, 29, 30. I hung it up. I called it a career. I said, well, I got to do something else. And I don't want to be one of the guys that just fades out or, like you're just here today, gone tomorrow.
Right.
Um, so there was a little bit of difficulty with that, kind of taking that on. And, I still have to stay in the gym. I still have to keep on doing all the athlete things, just because my body's conditioned to it. Like every morning I surf, I snowboard, I do that from 7 to 9, or I have to do some type of activity just because that makes my mind function a lot more. And then right after 11 o'clock ish, I go do my other activity, which is a bike ride or something, you know, less less impactful like yoga or some other type of movement. Or if the waves are really kicking, or if it's an awesome powder day, shoot, I'll go back out there for another run. But like right as I was hanging up, the snowboard industry kind of provided me an opportunity, or I almost made it myself. My sponsor had offered, my board sponsor at the time, they offered me a 1 year contract, which pretty much means that you're going to come in and you're going to train a lot of the younger guys how to go out there and be a professional. And I said, nah, I'm good. I kind of want to start my own snowboard brand.
Hmm.
And I mean, nicely, they kind of like laughed, like, oh, yeah, right. And then I said, I'll be gunning for you guys in about 5 years. And then they really laughed. But, they politely said, hey, good luck. We're rooting for you. We're cheering for you. That's just how that community is, or, where there's no lost love. So went on to start my very first brand, YME Snowboards, and then even kind of thought about it with an exit from the background, where I said, we're going to take this and we're going to create a brand. We're going to create a bunch of other things. And, at the time, my other reason for starting a business is I said I could go back to school, get a job in the industry, but everybody wanted experience. I said, why not just take that same money that I was going to spend on education and create the experience? So with anything, build as I learned from my first business, build more with an exit in mind. So we wanted to create a brand that hit critical mass, where it'd get acquired by one of the other bigger ones out there,
Mhm.
just to take back their space, where they keep it or retain management, or create enough stuff in there inside of it with multiple entities rolled up, with intellectual property, your supply chain, something that's so vertically integrated that we could take exits, as well. And a lot of it was learning experiences as well too, of how do we further fund this business. um, so at one point, we had multiple factories in Asia, in Poland as well too, Canada, and then in the United States. And we were looking to scale, with the snowboard industry. It's a really long sales cycle, and then any of your buyers, or your retailers, they're giving you like net 90 terms at the least, which is an aging account receivable. It means 90 days. You get paid at 90 days after they receive your product. So we're going through some cash flow scenarios of, all right, how do we really take this? And we're starting to get more orders and stuff like that. And we're really starting to hit that essentially critical mass. But as we were taking on funding, or looking at taking on funding, we looked at other options. And I said, you know what? We're really good at sourcing and creating deals with supply chain procurement.
Mhm.
We're really good at logistical algorithms and keeping our costs down that way with our suppliers. We have great quality control. what can we do there? And at the same time, too, we had some of our other friends coming in to do collaborations like Marley Mellow Mood, or some of my friends kind of their music group where they're looking for merch contracts. And I said, well, if we can do this for snowboards, we could kind of do this for just about any tangible product out there. So we spun off a whole separate sub company of that, where we were not necessarily in the snowboard business. Like you look at what's it, the founder with Michael Keaton, like here we were trying to sell hamburgers and franchises. And he realized when he had that breakthrough moment, he realized that he was just in the real estate business as well as the supply chain business for hamburgers and hamburger stands. And all of a sudden it was a giant reset. So we have this B2C side. Where's the B2B angle at this? Whoa, we're in the supply chain business of supplying snowboard brands as well with their products, their equipment, and anybody else out there that's making a tangible product. So from there, all of a sudden that took off a little bit more than the snowboard brand, which was kind of it's one of those moments where it's kind of an ego check, because everybody wants to go out there and build this amazing brand, but the other company takes off a bit more. And from there, we ran that for another couple of years. And I took an exit out of the supply chain company, out of the import export company, in 2017, 2018.
So then now you've transitioned into actually what you were talking about at the meeting is going out there and finding these cash flowing businesses. And I know you're in several different businesses now. So for those out there, they're looking for passive income. Maybe if they're facing burnout in their profession, maybe they're wanting to get to the point where they still like what they do, but they would love to be where work is optional for them. And they're just looking for different sources of passive income coming in, whether it's from real estate or from these cash flowing businesses. So tell us a little bit about sort of how that process works, how your company or how your group, how you find them, source the deals, how you make them available. Kind of walk us through that process.
Yeah. So, here I was, kind of going into that. I took a few exits. I had to find somewhere to park, just to access cash.
Right.
I know business and I know how to just shift stuff and reposition stuff. And it was a new challenge. And it was kind of it's a mindset where it was another ego check where we all say buy, buy, buy. And there's so much, build, build, build. There's so much stuff out there with building businesses and startup stuff. And then partnerships is a great way to build stuff as well too, and joint ventures. But what if you could go out there, and this was for 3-4 years ago, where I said, what if I could just buy something that is existing and just reposition it? So that was a giant reset, because we all, and I asked the question at our retreat. I said, how many people built their first house? No hands went up. Sometimes there's one in the room. And then I asked how many people built their second house. Maybe like 1 or 2 hands. So why would you build a business? You don't build a house.
Right.
Buying a business, you're getting something that's cash flowing from the get-go. So one of the things out there that's kind of presenting itself, an emerging trend, is a lot of the boomers are retiring, and they have kids that don't want to take over their business, or some of them are, unfortunately, none of us are getting out of here alive. If anybody has the answer to that question, please drop that in, or tell me that. I'd love to know that. But
a perfect example is my dad. He's in his early 70s. He has a hardware store. His dad started after World War II. Well, I don't want it. I don't know how to fix anything. And my brother's an engineer. So that's a perfect example right there,
Yeah, where 2 people don't want it. And, you look at a bigger case scenario of like on the macro side, the Denver Broncos, I think there was 7 children there of the Bolin family, where they couldn't decide on who was going to run it. And the trust said, well, if nobody's going to be selected as a leader, then we're going to put this on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they made out pretty good on that. But that's the same scenario that we're seeing. So it's going and evaluating these businesses, and it's almost like a funnel where you're going through and you're evaluating on a formula out there. I look at risk mitigation, and then I'm taking data sets, and then preemptive disaster management, and then the historical disasters out there, because we're kind of in this recession. We've been here for the last 12 months. So looking at those, and then formulating a diversification plan, looking out there of what's safe, what's not safe. Nothing's really absolutely safe. And then kind of classifying these businesses into 3 subcategories. So we have our growth companies that are at 40 to 60% on the top. Then we have our value companies that are 1 to 10%. And then your mission-based speculative companies, those are kind of like your venture capital or your startups, or even your nonprofits. They're kind of at the question mark. So looking at those, I'm looking at more of the value-based businesses to start, especially as I'm building out a portfolio to diversify into like higher growth companies. Case in point, there's some really boring businesses out there. Boring businesses are, to me, they're sexy though. I like them. Stuff like your liquor stores, your service stations, and then your laundromats, even the car washes. So you look at these, like you look at the corner gas station, and you're like, cool. So there's nothing exciting about it, but sometimes, especially in cities, those can be an 8-figure business, gross. But guess what? Oftentimes, ownership is not involved. They have employees, they have managers and stuff like that oversees it. Sometimes they own multiples of it, multiple service stations. Same thing with like your liquor store conglomerates. Ownership's oftentimes not involved. They have a general manager,
Mm-hmm.
and they have all the working pieces. The great part about some of these businesses and the value side is they've been around for 20, 30 years. I mean, shoot, how long was your father's hardware store around for? 40 years or
That's 41.
41. Okay. So, what's that come with? That comes with an established entity, LLC, S Corp, C Corp. That comes with established credit, comes with pretty darn good cash flow. So it's looking at it, and then there's 2 subcategories I really like right now. That stuff with your unsophisticated SMEs. So that's stuff in the $100,000 to $1 million range. And then into your sophisticated SMEs. So that's stuff in your $1 million to $10 million range. There's a few things that you have to look at. We have to look at what's the EBITDA on it. So what's the estimated income before debt, income, tax amortization, the whole schedule, or seller's discretionary earnings. So like going through that and looking at that. So sometimes you have a $1 million business out there. Your SD, your seller's discretionary earnings, or your net. Sometimes it's not that great. Other times we find ones out there where, holy cow, they have some amazing margins, some amazing systems, some amazing processes, and sometimes that can net 600K. What I'm looking at are things that net ownership, minimum 200K to 400K in a perfect scenario, just on the value side. And then we're also looking at stuff, everything that you have here too is, there's a formula as you're evaluating these. So I'm looking at the very top. The big thing that I want to look for is allows for, and you can look at stuff, I can shoot you about 75 different places you can look at. But one of the things I search for is allows for absentee owner. That's one of my instant qualifications, that I can have an absentee owner scenario right from the get-go. It has an operator, or there's potential for me to install an operator based on the seller's discretionary earnings, the net or the EBITDA. I'm going to then look at what's called the multiple valuation. Every industry has its multiple. There's so many different ones. You can look up, there's a few sites or a few things I can drop in there, but there's probably about 200 different multiples out there. So some of your lower multiples, higher multiples. So there's a formula that we're going to plug in where we take the SDE times the multiple, and that's going to get us our asking price. We're going to look at our asking price that's out there, and we're going to evaluate and see if they're asking too much based on the multiple of it. And then we're going to see if we can use that for a negotiating point. As we're kind of looking at these, right from the tip top, we're looking at about 1,000 businesses to make 10 in the total funnel. But also we're using data aggregation and stuff like that. So, you click on 1,000, probably from like day one or day two, there's probably about 500 that instantly fall off of that. So we're really only looking at about 500 to 250 in the initial stage of evaluation and, kind of our committee discussion. Then once we get into like the lower 100 to 200, we're going to start discussing stuff in a committee. But sometimes as you're doing this solo, you're the committee of one. So let's say you only want to acquire one, it's the 100-to-1 deal, where you're looking at these and, this looks great, that looks great, awesome. And then kind of getting down to that lower stage of your IOI, your indication of interest. That's where you're talking to the brokers, the owners, and kind of going through that whole stage of signing the NDA, looking at your P&Ls, and then your past years of taxes, and then also asking the questions too of, all right, owners should absolutely know this of, like there's the red flags. Like if somebody doesn't know what your cost per acquisition or cost per lead is, your time per lead, average value, lifetime value of customer, they have no clue about any of that, probably not the best one to take over unless GM or, another operating employee can give you that information. That's going to be inheriting somebody else's mess. So that's another way you kind of look at that and you cross them off. The other thing too is we're meeting, as we get down into these narrower stages, from IOI to LOI, letter of intent, we're meeting with ownership, discussing culture, everything else with them, and what else involved of their day-to-day operations. Like where did they see this going in, the 10 years? Should they not take an exit? So kind of asking all those questions and having those conversations. And really it's, for me, it's obviously using that formula of risk mitigation, data, preemptive disaster management, but also there's a lot of gut feeling in there too, where I'm just trusting my gut and knowing that this owner is a good person, and they mean well for their culture, for their staff, for their teams. And then sometimes, it's not a good fit. Sometimes it's a great fit. Once we get to the LOI stage, that's where we're going to do more of our negotiations. What transitions look like, getting our transition teams in there and making that acquisition. You get into the transaction. So for the transaction, we could talk about the whole funding side of that, or like what it looks like getting into that, getting into the whole cash flow scenario, getting into the funding side. The great part about a lot of these is they're SBA pre-approved. So case in point, let's say you find one I'm just going to throw out like a liquor store out there, for example. You find one where they're asking 950K. Look at the P&Ls, all your numbers, your taxes. After after your gross and your net, it does about 120,000 a month. From your net, you're doing about 28.5. You're looking at all your costs of seeing, all right, this makes sense. This is our cost of electricity. This is our cost of inventory. This is our profit margin. Awesome. Some stuff you can take, you can carve out the real estate, peel that off. You can carve out the inventory. You can do some inventory financing on that to get it under the belt. But when it's SBA approved, that means you can just go out there and you can do what's called the SBA 7A loan. That stuff is approved for 500,000 to 5 million. A lot of them will do 20 years amortized. So there's one that we did where it was 20 years amortized, 2% down. It was 0.0283. So we had to come up with under $100,000.
Wow.
Easy. Debt servicing, $4,000. So essentially, we just bought revenue.
Yeah.
And then the fun part too is once you have it under portfolio, you're not going to really necessarily touch anything for like the first year or so. It's just retention. I'm focused on retention of operators, of staff, and stuff like that. Sometimes it means giving people a bump, bump in benefits, bump in pay. But here's the thing. Somebody else asked me, they're like, well, how do you keep these operators around? Don't they want equity? Man, Jeff, nobody thinks like we do. Like you're an entrepreneur. A lot of these people are the operators or GMs. Guess what? They want to know that they can come back and have a job. They have a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
They have the sure thing. So cool. You're up and you're just telling them, hey, we're going to be here. We're going to be in here for the long haul, and we'll give you a bump in pay. We want to keep you around for the next 2 to 3 years. Awesome. Usually I'm not changing anything for the first year though. Once I have that under portfolio, then I also have leverage of that business to go make acquisitions of other businesses.
Right.
So let's say there's another one that's the same thing. How do I double my revenue? Just go out and make another acquisition. You doubled your revenue in day one. You're not even to change any of your marketing or anything like that, or doing any crazy, of the marketing, sales, fulfillment, administration. You're just making that acquisition. And then that kind of lets me get into to other companies. So this is more of a value-based scenario. We have a marketing agency where we're kind of doing integrations and we're doing the stacks. So a while back, we started a marketing agency. We said, how can we double our customers? How can we get more cash flow out of this business? The instant answer was go buy another business that adds value. So if you're a marketing agency and you're specifically doing like Facebook or Instagram ads or building funnels, let's say there's an email marketing agency out there that can work on the back end. Like how many different parts of that agency can you roll up and stack internally in that portfolio? These things, sometimes you don't necessarily need to have an operator because you're just doing, instead of an acquisition, you're doing more of a merger. As we're building up this portfolio a bit more, what are other things we can close the gap with? Database, data aggregation, that's foundational stuff. Then we start looking at the other fun things. How can we buy the products that we're going to sell? Software as a service, AI, and then how can we close that gap? FinTech, having your financial tech, whether that's your payment processing or some type of currency bartering. How can you further tie that in to that portfolio of that vertical that you're building?
So realistically, somebody that's like, let's say they want a 10 grand extra month, that's probably not too hard to do, whether it's two $5,000 a month businesses or just one $10,000 a month business. Kind of from start to finish, what's kind of the average time frame from the time, if they want to start working with you, from the time you start looking for these businesses to the time where, hey, they got it, it's starting to cash flow? What's give us that time frame? What are they looking at
60 to
roughly?
90 days.
Really, that quick?
Yeah.
Wow. So it's not like a year or just a lengthy process. It's pretty quick.
Yeah. It can be pretty quick. Some of the bigger ones, those will take, a year when you're in the 1 to 10 million, but the stuff that's $1 million and under,
10, they want an
unsophisticated,
extra, let's say 10 to $20,000 a month of revenue. So you're saying 60 to 90 days?
60 to 90 days.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So
And
somebody, go ahead.
a lot of times what's holding it up too is stuff like escrow. Escrow, as you know, in the real estate world, escrow slows down everything.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the stuff that is totally out of your hands. But usually once you find something, you meet ownership, um, you can move pretty fast. There was one we did, and it was a cash purchase, 3 weeks.
Wow. So somebody is interested in getting more information about that or potentially working with you. How do they get in touch with you, or how do they learn more about you or your business?
Yeah, so you can find, we have a new site that's launching. It's called New Money U. So it's the letter U. And we'll be building out multiple deals on that. That'll be launching in 2023
That's
after the first of the year.
newmoneyu.com.
newmoneyu.com.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then anybody, you can find me on my site, jefflavin.net. And that's where I live and a lot of my content lives. And we have links to that as well too. New Money U's linked on there. So,
And
and
I'll put all the links that you're talking about below this
yeah,
video. So I'll make it easy.
awesome. And then any social media that you're on, I'm on everything: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So I kind of joke, if you ever seen that episode from Seinfeld, where it all goes down the same drains, like peeing in the shower, it all goes down the same drains. It all eventually ends up back here in my phone. And I'm happy to meet people wherever they're comfortable being met at.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate the time and knowledge. And I know we could probably talk another couple hours because I know we talked several hours at the meeting, and it's just what you've done in your story is just, it's amazing. And you're such a humble guy and willing to share with other people. So that was, the main reason why I wanted to get you on here, and really looking forward, me personally, working with you to get some cash flowing business, but also some other people in my group, I know for a fact are wanting this as well. So I really appreciate it.
Heck yeah. And that's one of my favorite things I call people. Once you get into, the work optional stage, I call it a little bit different terminology. I call them free range humans, where you can go where you want,
That's right.
wherever you want, with whoever you want, whenever you want. And that's where the magic happens. So I'm stoked to add as much value as I can and help create more free range humans. The world needs more of it.
Actually, that's on that to end on that note, I spoke with a dentist yesterday that he was a pediatric dentist in somewhere up north. I don't know if it was Minnesota or somewhere, but anyway, he was married to a dentist, and she wasn't really working a whole lot because she had a back injury, had like a herniated disc or whatever, had two little kids, I think like 10 and 8 years old. And I always like to ask people, like, what's your purpose for reaching out to me? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And he said, you know what, I really just what you said about the free range. He said, in a few years, if I just want to take off for a month and take my family to Europe in the summer while they're out of school, I want to be able to do that. And right now
Yeah.
I can't, and I'm 40 years old, but I want to get to do that. So, and that's exactly what you're talking about, having enough income coming in to where either work is optional or they're a free range human, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about helping those people. Um, and some of my biggest accomplishments, it hasn't been exits or, anything like that. One of my biggest accomplishments, and I should have mentioned this, but I probably would have had the whole room crying. Our team manager was going through his second battle of cancer. His tumors or his cancer had spread to his liver and abdominal wall, and we helped him. We were able to help him get his treatment, cover quite a bit of that,
Hmm.
and then he didn't make it. Left behind a 1-year-old son. And that stung. I still tear up about it to this day. But his family, I looked at them and I said, "Don't worry about it, man," because they were renovating their house. I said, "Don't worry about it. We got you. Like if you need a place, cool. We'll help you out. And just being able to help those around you, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So that's why I do it. It's just to create an amazing community. And sounds like, you likewise have an amazing community, Jeff. And it's been such a pleasure to share my knowledge, and I'm available. So
Yeah.
however people want to reach out, I'm glad to provide.
I appreciate it. So again, folks, I will put Jeff's contact information, his websites below
Mm.
this video, and I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you again soon to further our conversation.
Awesome. Sounds good. I gotta put
There
the
you go.
shades off. Makes it official.
All right, take care.